Hi, hello, welcome back to my living room. We are still wearing this and we're still here. Not even bothering to change clothes and pretend it's different days. Today we have another book review for you of another thriller. I read 2 thrillers in a row. This one is called Rock, Paper, Scissors. This one I chose all on my own. This was not a patron recommended reading. I've had this one on my radar for a little while, and lo and behold, I was looking at my library's website and there it was, available to read now. Or rather listen to now in my case. Because you know I do audiobooks most of the time. And can I just say, this book is dual POV and they had a man and a woman reading the different parts, the husband and wife, and the husband was read by Richard Armitage, whichever, I'm sorry Richard, but your voice is so sexy. So I was glad to listen to this one. I recommend the audiobook, although I wish he was in it more. Let's read the blurb on Goodreads, shall we? Think you know the person you married? Think again. Things have been wrong with Mr. and Mrs. Wright. Mr. and Mrs. Wright. Spelled W-R-I-G-H-T. For a long time. When Adam and Amelia went a weekend away to Scotland, it might be just what their marriage needs. Self-confessed workaholic and screenwriter Adam Wright has lived with face blindness his whole life. He can't recognize friends or family or even his own wife. Every anniversary, the couple exchanges traditional gifts, paper, cotton, pottery, tin, and each year Adam's wife writes him a letter that she never lets him read, until now. They both know this weekend will make or break their marriage, and they didn't randomly win this trip. One of them is lying, and someone doesn't want them to live happily ever after. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of secrets, and an anniversary they will never forget. Now this definitely qualifies as a domestic thriller, and I usually don't read those, but it also kind of has that trapped somewhere situation going on where they are trapped majority of the time in this Scottish hideaway, the weather gets bad, and oh no, they're stuck there, and stuff might be going on, and is one or both of them up to nefarious dealings? So I was like, I can look past the domesticness of this thriller for one of my favorite tropes of all time. Also, apparently I just like a thriller to start out my year. This was my first read of 2022. And last year, one of my favorite reads and one of my very first reads of the year was also a thriller. So I guess it's just something that I do. I loved the idea of the story, even if the execution wasn't perfect. I really like the idea of face blindness in the story. I do not suffer from face blindness myself. If you do and you read this book, please comment below and tell me how you thought it was done, because I have no idea if it was done well or not. But like I said, the husband was voiced by Richard Armitage, and whew.
Look back at me.
I wish that there had been more husband POV and less wife. Not just because of his voice, but because between his wife's POV and looking back at the letters that she has written throughout the years of their marriage, we get the least of his voice and his POV, and that was a real shame. He's the most interesting character, I feel. I will point out one place where I think the book kind of contradicted itself. The husband mentions that his face blindness is so severe that he can't even really read facial expressions. And it comes up several times throughout the book that he's struggling to read someone's facial expression, except at the very beginning, it says he recognizes an expression that his wife wears often. And I'm like, first of all, you're recognizing it, and second of all, you're realizing that she wears it often, so what's going on? I thought maybe it was going to be a clue, but no, actually, I think it's just a little bitty mistake that slipped in. There is a dog in this story, and the dog lives. I'm just putting that out there right now. As soon as the dog entered the scene, I was like, oh no, but he lives. Thank you, writer of this book. I did pick up on many pieces of the twist in this story, but the twist itself, the whole thing, I didn't nail down. So I will say that it was a pretty decently unexpected twist. Even though I picked up the little clues in the pieces, I wasn't quite ready to say like, yes, this is the twist. However, as with most thrillers, you're gonna have to suspend some disbelief, probably a lot of it, especially at the end of the story. This is just a common thriller thing. The further along you get in a thriller book, the more bonkers the situation tends to get, and this one is no exception. It gets pretty bonkers. One thing I didn't like is that both the husband and the wife had the red herring of, we're planning something. Both of them hinting about having planned something potentially that seems like it could be potentially sinister at the beginning of the story, but then it turns out to not be anything. That was just a red herring. Their only plans were like, I was planning to give her a smooch. You know, like I was planning to sweep her off her feet. I was planning to save our marriage with this trip. I think that this story, without giving away the twist of it, would have been stronger if the husband and wife character had not been struggling with their marriage. It would have made the twist even more like meaty and even more of a gut punch if their marriage was actually good. And then we get to the twist part and it can really be like, oh my gosh, like what are they going to do? This should tear them apart, but their marriage is good. With them having a marriage on the rocks, it just doesn't hit as hard, I feel, as it could have if they were having a good marriage. The husband also has plot-convenient memory issues. Yes, whenever the book needs him to forget something, that's when he forgets something. It's very, very obvious, too. You know exactly every time he forgets something that it's a detail that you're going to need to know for the twist. I will say the least realistic thing in this entire book, and as I remind you, it does get very bonkers at the end, is that there's a character who writes an entire novel in the style of someone else, sends that novel to that person's agent, and it is published. And no one's the wiser. So an amateur who's practiced just a little bit, writes a Stephen King book, because there's a novelist in this who's clearly based off of Stephen King, in my opinion. And so at one point, an amateur writes a whole Stephen King book and sends it to Stephen King's agent, and the agent buys it and publishes it. And I'm like, no. The writing overall was fine. There are actually eventually 3 POVs that we deal with. As so often happens in thrillers, you start out with like 2 and then you usually pick up another or even 2 more as the book goes on, and this book was no different. And it was fine, but I feel like if I didn't have the voices of the people reading me the book, it wouldn't have been as clear whose POV I was in. I don't think the author did an amazing job of differentiating voice. The characters are different enough. They're given enough interests and things that make them different, especially the husband and the wife. The other character that comes along later, it is a little bit more challenging sometimes. But the husband and the wife have enough like interest in different things apart from each other that make it so I can tell who's who most of the time. And the writing overall was the sort of writing that does just kind of blend into the background and just lets you get into the story. So not exceptional, but it's also not drawing you out with purple prose. I don't even remember what this was. I wrote, the whole thing with his mother was clunky AF. I would have reworked it. I don't remember. It has been about a month since I finished this book, but apparently I found it to be clunky. Okay, now I'm going to throw in a couple of spoilers here at the end to talk about things that I wish that they had done a little bit differently. So we are entering spoiler territory now, friends. You know the drill. I will put River's song up on the screen, and when she is gone, it's safe to return. So this is a book-ending spoiler. If you don't want that, go no further, alright? So at the end, we find out that the person who had been writing him the letters and the person that he's married to now are 2 different people, which he knew. He didn't mistake them because of his face blindness, although I was wondering if that was going to be a thing. But his old wife is actually the one who wrote him the letters, and his new wife was his affair partner. But he's struggling with that marriage too. So there's this whole confusion where you think one woman is both the POV of the wife and writing him the letters, when it turns out that that's not true. Okay, and at the very end we get a whole crazy bananas bonkers scene where we find all of this out, and then he ends up back with the first wife. But he wants to. And this is the thing. I wish that this book had gone either having him be like, fuck no, I'm leaving both of you, which would be way better for him, or had gone fully like dark and had him be like trapped by his first wife again. He would have been trapped with her, this crazy lady who does murders. It could have been really interesting and really dark. Oh, I'm running out of memory card. What was my other thought? The very end, there's a private investigator who goes to check out the retreat and find out things about people who are dead. I'm not going to tell you who all is dead by the end, but I really wanted him to find a body and resolve to solve the case, and that to be the end of the book. But instead he's like, oh, stuff went down here, none of my business, I guess, and leaves. Like, it would have been really cool if it seemed like there could be more you know, the reader could be like, oh no, it seemed like we kind of had this happy ending, but it's not. It feels like the author almost went dark a couple of times and then reined it back in. I almost wonder if it was like the publisher or the editors or something that told them to like pull it back from going really, truly, properly dark and really screwing over the characters. Anyway, that is my review of Rock, Paper, Scissors. My memory card is almost out of space again. Thank you so much for joining me. I do recommend this one. If you haven't read it, check it out, especially if you like domestic thrillers, you don't mind a little bit of suspended disbelief, and you don't mind some balls to the wall craziness at the end. Check out my Patreon if you want to. Check out my social media linked in the doobly-doo if you want to. Check out my book, The Wolf and the Hawk, a fantasy romance, available now on Amazon if you want to. And I am going to go take all of the footage off of my memory card because I have to. And I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
When you marooned me on that godforsaken spit of land, you forgot one very important thing, mate.
You forgot my patrons. Rita, Deborah, Alexandra, My 96, Afra, Melissa, AC, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Marween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Light Julie, Belle, and Sophie, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, Sarah, and Lennox. Come all you fair and tender girls that flourish in your prime. Beware, beware, keep your garden fair, and let no man steal your time.